At Tommy's house, in the living room, Chucky is showing Tommy his new pet sea monkeys, mispronounced by both Tommy and Chucky as sea monies, that his father, Chaz, recently got for him. Tommy comments that they only look like a bunch of specks to him, and Chucky replies that he'd also look like a speck if he were that small. Chaz and Stu walk into the living room from the kitchen, and Chaz points out to Stu that he thinks it's wonderful to see the babies interested in the sea monkeys. He mentions that sea monkeys were also his first pet. Stu skeptically states that he doesn't think freeze-dried brine shrimp fall in the pets category, and Chaz replies, "What do you mean, Stu? They're the perfect pet. You don't have to walk them, you barely have to feed them, and they don't leave any nasty surprises in your slippers." Dee Dee walks, carrying a blanket, flippers, and a floating tube, and she interrupts her husband and Chaz to tell them they need to start packing. Stu sarcastically replies, "Hey Dee, we are the crowds." Dee Dee just sighs and hands the blanket to her husband and the flippers and floating tube to Chaz. Chucky remarks to his best friend that the sea monkeys look happier on the box they came in, and Tommy adds that they look a lot bigger too. Chucky then states that he believes the sea monkeys are sad and want to get back to their castle at the bottom of the ocean, as depicted on the box. Tommy agrees that he'd want to be at a castle down below the ocean if he had one. Chucky then mentions that he wishes they could get the sea monkeys back there. Tommy says that perhaps they can, and Chucky asks how. He points out that they don't know where the ocean is. The babies then decide to secretly take the sea monkeys to the beach. Chucky then picks up the heavy fishbowl his sea monkeys are living in and begins to carry it over the front door. Presumably the rest of the items the group is taking with them to the beach and waiting to get loaded into the van. But Lou is bringing over a plastic white Cool Man cooler with ice and drinks the group is taking to the beach with them, stops Chucky, puts the cooler down, takes the fishbowl from Chucky, and puts it back where it was before, telling Chucky that he can't take his sea monkeys to the beach with him, and jokingly adds in, "Don't want them to get sunburned, do ya?" Chucky then asks his best friend, "Now what are we going to do, Tommy? The grown-ups won't let us take the sea monkeys to the beach. That is so sad." Tommy says not to worry and mentions that he has an idea. He takes Chucky over to the cooler and takes its top off, and Chucky tells Tommy that he understands his idea. While none of the adults are looking, Tommy brings Chucky's fishbowl of sea monkeys over to the cooler, with Chucky telling Tommy to be careful and not to spill them, and pours its contents into the cooler. Tommy then hands the empty fishbowl to Chucky to take away, puts the lid back on the cooler just before anyone can see, and he and Chucky then sit innocently on the floor as Stu comes in, picks up the cooler and takes it out to the car, unaware of the extra passengers he's taking on board. Tommy and Chucky smile at each other. Eventually, the group is on the highway en route to the beach. In addition to Tommy and his family and Chucky and his father, Angelica and her father is driving the van they're all traveling in, and Dee Dee's parents, Boris and Minka. As they drive down the highway, the adults all sing Low Bridge, with Lou enthusiastically singing 15 miles on the Erie Canal and so low. As the adults continue singing, Tommy, Chucky, and Angelica are sitting in the very back of the van. Chucky peeks inside the cooler that's between his and Tommy's car seats and asks the sea monkeys if they're okay. Tommy tells Chucky not to worry and they'll be at the beach any minute. Angelica, sitting in a car seat that's facing Tommy, Chucky, and the cooler in between them, decides to have some fun with them and asks them, "Do you babies know who lives at the beach?" They both shake their heads to reply no, and Angelica replies, "The Sandman." Tommy asks, "You mean the man who comes when you sleep?" Angelica replies, "No, the other Sandman." She describes him as someone who's real mean, who hides in the sand and eats babies for lunch. Tommy and Chucky gulp nervously and ask, "Babies?" Angelica replies, "Little babies, like you," and laughs wickedly. At last the group arrives at the beach, and Drew comments that it's not too crowded as he parks the van. The group then brings their things to a spot on the beach and gets everything set up. While this is happening, Tommy and Chucky complains about the beachwear and then their sunblock lotion. "Great, we look silly. We're sticky and we smell like a coconut cream pie." Angelica then runs quickly by in her pink swimsuit and shouts out loud to no one in particular, "Look at me! Look at me!" Tommy replies to Chucky's complaint, referring to Angelica, "Well, at least we don't look like that." Chucky then points up the cooler to Tommy. "Tommy, look!" He and Tommy crawl over to it, and Tommy states, "All we gotta do is push this thing down in the water. Come on." Tommy and Chucky get in position and push against the cooler as hard as they can. Unfortunately, they're unable to budge the heavy cooler. They stop pushing and Chucky states, "Oh great, now what?" Lou then walks over and says to Tommy and Chucky, "Excuse me, scouts, gotta get something. Wet my whistle." As he opens the cooler, takes out a soda can for himself to drink, closes the cooler, and walks away whilst drinking from the can. Tommy then states to Chucky that they need to wait until the adults take more of the cans out so that the cooler gets easier to push. Chucky sighs eagerly. As time passes, the adults take more and more of the cans out of the cooler. Eventually, Dee Dee fixes herself a drink in a glass rather than drinking right from a can and adds ice cubes from the cooler to it. However, a few of Chucky's sea monkeys also get into Dee Dee's drink with the ice cubes. Dee Dee notices this but thinks they're just dirt from the beach. She pinches the helpless sea monkeys out of her drink and rubs them off her fingers and onto the hot, dry sand and shouts out loud, "Say, everyone, let's try and keep the lid closed." Chucky gasps in horror when he sees what Dee Dee did is inadvertently doing to sea monkeys, and Tommy puts his hand on his best friend's shoulder and consoles him, saying, "Don't worry, Chucky, we'll save the rest of them." Chucky replies that they have to hurry before it's too late. Suddenly, the two babies are nearly hit by a folding table that Lou and Boris are sitting down where the two babies are standing. Tommy and Chucky run out of the way in the nick of time, and Lou tells them both, "Hey, sports, be careful down there. You don't want to get squashed, do ya?" Lou asks Boris if he found a deck of cards they're looking for, and Boris replies, I'm looking. Boris then asks his wife from afar, "Minka, where's the bicycle bag?" And she responds sarcastically, "What do I look like here, you servant girl?" Tommy and Chucky look at each other for a brief moment in response to what they're seeing, and then they run over to the cooler to try pushing it again. They push it as hard as they can, and this time they finally manage to get it moving towards the water. Just as the two are making progress, Angelica skips over shouting, "Look at me! Look at me!" Tommy, not wanting Angelica to find out what they're doing and spoil their plan, tells Chucky to pretend they're not doing anything. Angelica stops next to them, and Tommy tells her that her bathing suit looks very nice. Angelica replies, "You didn't see what I can do in it." Angelica then demonstrates how she can swim by running out into the shallow water and waiting in it for a brief moment, shouting, I can swim! She then runs back to Tommy and Chucky and states enthusiastically to them, "Did you see? I can swim." Tommy, with an innocent look on his face, replies, "That was great, Angelica. We gotta be going." Angelica then suspiciously asks them, "Hey, what are you babies doing anyway?" They both reply, "Nothing." Angelica then asks, "Oh yeah? What's in here?" and peeks inside the cooler, but she only sees water, ice, and cans of soda, and she doesn't notice Chucky's tiny sea monkeys. Angelica closes the cooler and looks back at Tommy and Chucky. Tommy and Chucky both stare back innocently with smiles on their faces. Angelica glares at them suspiciously, and Tommy and Chucky both continue to stare back innocently. Angelica, unable to think of what's important about what they're doing, tells them, "You babies are really weird," and then runs off. Tommy and Chucky sigh with relief that Angelica didn't figure out, and they get back to pushing. Meanwhile, Chaz is sleeping on the stand, and Angelica walks over and decides to play a prank on him by burying him in the sand while he's sleeping, and begins to do just that. Back on Tommy and Chucky, they just manage to reach the edge of the water, but are unable to push the cooler further and get into the water. Chucky stops to rest and states to Tommy, who also stops to rest, "It won't move. It won't move. What are we going to do now? Tommy." Tommy tells Chucky to calm down, and he states he has an idea. He and Chucky walk a few steps away from the cooler, and Tommy states they'll run at the cooler on 3. They position themselves for a running start, and Tommy shouts 3, where the two can start. However, Stu comes over in front of them, not minding the cooler, picks them up and takes them away to show them how to build a good old-fashioned sandcastle. Dee Dee then walks up to the cooler, asks herself how it got there, then picks it up and takes it back to the group's spot on the beach. As Stu lectures Tommy and Chucky and demonstrates by building a castle, Tommy and Chucky then take their eyes off Stu and notice the cooler is under the table where Lou and Boris are playing a game of cards. Drew then comes over and asks his little bro what he's doing. Stu replies that he's showing Tommy and Chucky the finer points of sandcastle construction. Drew briefly examines the castle that Stu is building and gives an opinion. Shouldn't this outer wall be further from the central courtyard? Stu, confident with his own judgment, replies, I'll let you know. If you do that, there won't be any room for the moat. Drew replies, "Moat? Oh, brother, you are out of touch. What's current in sandcastles is more of a deconstructive treatment." Stu, fed up with his brother's judging, brings back a sensitive memory. "Like the deconstructive treatment you gave my castle when I was 8. Drew replies, "Well, you stomped over mine first." Stu adds in, "Well, you poured sand down my shorts." Drew retorts, "Well, you dropped a crab on my stomach." Stu and Drew's conversation then devolves into a brotherly argument. Neither of them notice Tommy and Chucky crawling away and back towards the cooler. As the babies approach the cooler, Lou and Boris scoldingly asks Lou where the two of hearts is. Lou replies that he didn't take the two of hearts. Boris then angrily tells Lou he has to play a game, he has to play a card if he picks it up. And Lou angrily replies, "Where'd you hear those rules, Budapest?" The two grandfathers then notice Tommy and Chucky as they begin pushing the cooler towards the water again. As the two are pushing, Angelica decides to have some fun with them. She buries her left foot in the sand and pretends she's desperately struggling to free it from the Sandman she mentioned earlier. She screams at Tommy and Chucky, "Help! Help! He's got me! The Sandman's got me!" Tommy and Chucky gasp in horror, but Angelica then effortlessly puts her foot out of the sand and runs past the two babies, laughing wickedly. Chucky asks Tommy, "Do you think the Sandman really almost got her?" And Tommy replies, "I don't know. She might have made it up, like the time she said your blanket was alive." Chucky tells Tommy not to remind him of that. Tommy apologizes and then says, "Come on, gotta get the sea monkeys over that hill," pointing at a mound of sand in their path. The two then resume pushing the cooler, and they manage to get it almost to the top of the mound before it gets stuck. And Tommy tells Chucky to go around and pull. But as Chucky walks to the other side, he suddenly sees his father's unconscious head sticking out of the side of the mound, as it's now apparent that the mound of sand is what Angelica buried Chaz in as part of the prank. She pulled on him, and in horror, he shouts, "Ah! My dad's being decapitated!" Has to say decapitated. Chucky then runs off screaming in sheer horror, and Tommy asks, "Chucky, what happened?" Before he can get an answer, Chaz wakes up and rises out of the sand, and this frightens away Tommy, who thought it was the Sandman Angelica was talking about, who screams, "Ah! The Sandman!" Chaz doesn't notice the two frightened babies running off as he dusts himself off, but he then notices the cooler and asks himself what it's doing there. He takes a can of soda out and drinks it, and he picks up the cooler and carries it back to the group's spot. Meanwhile, Tommy catches up with Chucky, and they both stop and sit down near a wire mesh trash receptacle in order to catch their breath and get themselves together. Chucky remarks that setting his sea monkeys free sure isn't easy, and Tommy adds that he's been thinking that perhaps the sea monkeys aren't worth all the trouble they're going through, adding that they're just little specks. Chucky replies in disappointment, "Just little specks?" He adds, When a grown-up walks past you and doesn't even know you're there, don't you feel like just little specks?" Chucky goes on, "When you're not tall enough to open a door or turn on a light or get the cookies, don't you feel like just little specks?" Tommy tries to reply, but Chucky continues, "I don't know about you, Tommy, but for all the little specks out there, I'm pushing that thing down the water." Tommy, his determination restored, as in, "Let's go," and the two march back to their mission. While the babies are doing that, Lou and Boris's disagreement to the rules of the game has turned into a heated argument. Boris angrily tells Lou, "Friendly game, schmendly game. I'm telling you, when you pick up a card, you gotta play this card." Lou angrily replies, "Oh, you're off your nut. I've played this game for over 15 years, and just because you pick up a card, that doesn't mean you gotta put it down." And as he says this, Tommy and Chucky get to the cooler, which is once again under the table, and push it out into the open without either grandfather noticing. Argument between Lou and Boris starts to get even more heated as the two stand up and lean into each other's faces with aggressive glares, and Dee Dee comes over and tells the two that it's only a game and there's no reason to get upset. As this is happening, Tommy and Chucky stop pushing and think for a moment, though no one else takes notice of either of them. Dee Dee's father replies as Chaz and Minka walk in and to help. "Who's upset? Who's upset? Just because you old Schmedrick called me a nut?" Lou aggressively rebuts. "Schmedrick? I've got your Schmedrick." And he and Boris attempt to take each other on physically, though Dee Dee and Chaz hold the two back. Tommy states that he has an idea. Boris states to Lou as he puts up his fist, "So you want to play dirty, eh?" Minka tells her husband to watch his blood pressure, and Boris then grabs the entire deck of cards and tells Lou he's got a card game for him. Lou asks what, and Boris replies, 52 pickup, and flicks the cards all over the sand. A horrified Lou exclaims, "Ah, my cards!" and proceeds to pick him up as the carnage and arguing only continue to pile up. Back on Tommy and Chucky, Tommy brings over his dog Spike and ties his leash to one of the cooler's handles. Chucky asks Tommy if he's sure his idea will work, and Tommy replies that it's gotta work. Tommy then mounts his dog like a horse, shouts, "Yee-haw!" and gives him leg pressure, as if he really were a horse. The much stronger Spike begins to run and pull the cooler toward the water at a significant speed, with Chucky running behind to keep up. Just as Tommy and Spike reach the water, a huge and dangerous wave suddenly charges straight toward them and frightens them away. As the frightened Tommy and Spike turn back and dash to safety in the nick of time, Spike's leash comes loose from the cooler and they leave it behind. Tommy falls off his dog as he continues to run off, and Chucky catches up to him and helps him up. Chucky then shouts, "Oh no!" as the large wave washes up on the cooler and pulls it out of the water, where its remaining contents, including the remaining sea monkeys inside, are spilled out into the water, and its lid is lost before another wave washes it back onto the beach. Realizing their mission is finally accomplished, Tommy shouts in excitement, "We did it, Chucky! We did it!" Chucky, however, isn't excited like Tommy and begins to look kind of downhearted. Tommy asks his best friend what's wrong and states that he thought Chucky wanted to free them. Chucky replies, "I know, but I'm not sure they were ready. After all we've been through together, I miss them." He sniffles sadly. Tommy tells Chucky there's still time to say bye. And Chucky shouts out to his freed sea monkeys, "Goodbye, Sniffy. Goodbye, Spot. Goodbye, Binky. Goodbye, Oreo. Goodbye, Lefty. Goodbye, Mike." Tommy then consoles his best friend and tells him he did a nice thing by freeing his sea monkeys. Slightly cheered up Chucky says, "You think so?" Tommy replies, "Sure, sea monkeys belong in the sea. That's where the real castle is, along with the sea bananas they'll ever want." Tommy and Chucky face the sunset, and Tommy continues, "You did the right thing, Chucky, and they'll never forget you for it." Tommy and Chucky share an emotionally appropriate view of the sunset.